They say a mother's love begins the moment she feels a life growing inside her. But what happens when the father of that life walks away the moment it's born? Anna had just brought her baby into the world, her body still aching from surgery, her arms trembling as she held her son for the first time. She thought the hardest part was over. She was wrong. Her husband didn't show up at the hospital. Instead, he sent a text. 5 words. My mom will pick you up. No flowers, no kiss, no congratulations. Just a silence that sliced deeper than any scalpel could. And when she returned home, limping with a newborn in her arms, she found a stranger in a red dress sitting in her living room. Smiling, waiting, saying the words that would break her world in two. I'm not stealing your husband. I'm just taking back what was always mine. This isn't a story about revenge. It's about rebuilding. It's about how a broken woman used pain as blueprint to build a life stronger than the one that was torn away from her. Stay with us till the end. Because sometimes, the quietest women become the fiercest architects of their own freedom. Speech balloon and tell us in the comments. Have you ever had to start over when the world gave up on you? Anna's world narrowed to a single, excruciating pulse of pain. The fluorescent lights hummed above her as she lay on the hospital bed, clutching her lower belly where the stitches pressed like iron bands around a fragile wound. Every breath felt like fire, every heartbeat a reminder that she had just performed a miracle, and that her body was paying the price. She closed her eyes and remembered the first time she'd felt life stir inside her, a gentle flutter, like a hummingbird's wings against her ribs. For 6 years she had chased that moment, through failed treatments, false hopes, silent tears, and now, finally, here he was, her son, his cry echoing in the sterile room, announcing his arrival with uncanny strength. Tears slipped down her cheeks as the nurse wrapped him in a soft white blanket and placed him in her arms. His tiny hand curled around her finger with a grip that felt stronger than steel. As if he already understood the battle to come. Anna smiled, a real smile, her heart full for the first time. She thought at that moment there was nothing she couldn't endure. But when she lifted her phone an hour later, her blood turned cold. There it was, a message from Juan. Sorry, I can't make it. My mom will pick you up. Nothing more, no mention of their son. No words of congratulations, just the clinical chill of abandonment. The room spun. She stared at the screen, willing him to appear, to say it was a joke. But there was only silence. The nurse asked if she wanted tea. Anna shook her head. Numb, she pressed her hand to her chest, as though trying to hold her heart in place. A part of her wondered, had she ever really known this man by her side? By the time Anna made it to the taxi, pain shot through every step. The cab smelled of stale coffee and old upholstery. She settled into the seat, clutching her son close to her chest. Through the window, the city blurred into a haze of neon lights and indifferent faces. Your husband? The driver asked kindly, glancing in the rearview mirror. Anna's throat tightened. He couldn't come. The driver nodded, his eyes gentle. No one could understand how it felt to be left alone in that moment, alone with a newborn. Alone with her bleeding scar. Alone with the knowledge that the person she loved most had turned away. When they reached home, the front door swung open, and Anna's mother-in-law stepped aside to let her in. Behind her, the living room was immaculate, flowers on the table, baby clothes folded neatly. But where was Juan? Where was the embrace she had dreamed of? Instead, there he stood in the doorway of the next room, impeccably dressed. Hair still damp from the salon, his posture casual, almost nonchalant, and beside him, a woman in red, her smile sharp, her eyes alight with triumph. Anna froze. The late-night streets, the hospital corridors, the taxi ride, it all led here. To this moment of betrayal laid bare. Pain flared through her body again. But this time it was not just physical. It was a deeper, more savage cut. Mom, meet Julia, Juan said, voice calm as a winter wind. The woman I love. Julia's gaze slid to Anna, flickering with a challenge. I'm the future. You're the past. Anna lowered her eyes, hiding the storm that raged behind her lashes. Every instinct screamed to lash out, to demand justice, but she knew her body wouldn't hold up under the fury. Instead, she inhaled slowly, savoring the moment she realized what she truly had, her son. His small warmth pressed to her heart, and the raw, unbreakable bond between them. In that breath, between the betrayal and the birth, Anna made a silent vow. She would not collapse beneath this blow. She would rise. And when she did, nothing would ever be the same. Anna's legs felt like jelly as she stood just inside the doorway, clutching her son to her chest. The quaint living room, once a haven of pastel walls and cheerful baby mobiles, had transformed into a battleground. At its center, Julia lounged on the sofa, draped in scarlet silk that caught the afternoon light and threw it back as a cruel, mocking glow. Julia's smile was perfect, lips curved just enough to seem polite, eyes bright enough to suggest warmth. But Anna felt the thrum of a blade sliding between her ribs. Every breath burned with betrayal. Juan's voice cut through the heavy silence. "Mom, this is Julia, the woman I love." His tone was flat, rehearsed, like presenting a new car model, not the mother of his child. Anna's mother-in-law hovered behind them, her face a mask of shock and something else, flickers of wounded loyalty. Confusion, perhaps shame. She held a half-filled glass of water, her hand trembling so sharply that a drop splashed onto the polished floor. Yet still she did not speak. Anna swallowed. The world around her spun, the click of Julia's high heels against hardwood, the dull hum of the air conditioner, her son's small, startled whimper. In that moment, Anna realized how utterly alone she was. Her mind raced back to happier days. Juan's laugh as they toured their first apartment, their whispered hopes as they planned this baby's nursery. Even the sting of his absences in late pregnancy had seemed tolerable. Work stresses, fatigue, he had said. But this was something else entirely. Julia sat forward, silk pooling around her like blood. "Anna," she said, voice honey sweet, "I hope there's no hard feelings. I'm only taking what's rightfully mine." She tilted her head as if discussing a trivial matter, say, sharing a cab fare, rather than ripping a family apart. Anna felt every muscle in her body coalesce around a singular point of pain. Her son's breath warmed her neck. A single tear escaped and slid down her cheek, burning her own sting. She thought, I bled for this child. I endured every ache, every sleepless night, and this is gratitude. Memories crashed against her like storm waves, the moment she learned she was pregnant after 6 years of heartbreak. The hope blossoming in her chest, the midnight cramps, the tears of joy when that first ultrasound flickered on screen. And now, this final image. Julia's red silhouette framed by the doorway, a triumphant conqueror in someone else's home. Anna's mind whispered dark thoughts, shatter every vase, scream until someone listens. But she stood still, rigid with a cold fury, and held her son tighter. His tiny fingers pressed into her blouse. He didn't understand betrayal, he knew only her heartbeat. She breathed in, slow and deliberate, forcing the knife to withdraw. If she collapsed here, she'd break, body and spirit. Instead, she straightened, chin lifting until her gaze met Julia's. No tears, no pleading, only the unspoken promise that Anna would not be defeated. Juan cleared his throat. Let's talk later, he said, eyes flicking from Anna to his mother. He backed toward the kitchen, positioning himself closer to Julia, as if drawn by her scent of triumph. Julia rose, smoothing the front of her blouse. I'll let you two be, she murmured to Anna, her lips curving into that same tantalizing half-smile. Then she slipped past Juan, out of the room, her heels clicking a victory march. Anna exhaled. The air felt charged, every molecule humming with her fury, her grief, her fierce protectiveness. She glanced at her mother-in-law, whose shoulders sagged as though the weight of what had transpired pressed down on her. Yet the woman said nothing. Silently, Anna backed into her old nursery, pale lavender walls now stripped bare, crib cushions cold and empty. Here, at least, no red existed, only the gentle pastel where she had once dreamed of family. With trembling hands, she placed her son on the changing table, his soft coos the only comfort in that storm of silence. As she fastened his swaddle, her mind sharpened into focus. This wound was not just physical, not just emotional, it was the fuel for her next chapter. She would not crumble in the squeeze of betrayal. She would rise, protect her son, redefine home. In that moment, Anna embraced a new resolve, to fight not with anger, but with unwavering strength, to turn this pain into purpose, to build a life where no woman could ever threaten her child's sanctuary again. The house was too quiet. Each footstep echoed like a judge's gavel as Anna moved through rooms that once hummed with anticipation. Now they reverberated with emptiness, and the weight of unspoken pain. She settled on the edge of the bed, her back aching as if she'd carried the world on her shoulders. The incision along her abdomen throbbed in time with her heartbeat, a constant reminder that her body had been both vessel and battlefield. Her son lay in the crib, swaddled in the soft blanket she had chosen months ago, his small chest rising and falling with peaceful innocence. Anna reached a trembling hand toward him but hesitated. She had expected tears, perhaps a cry to pierce the silence. But there was only the soft rhythm of sleep. In that hush, the betrayal echoed loudest. Her mother-in-law hovered at the doorframe, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the pair. Anna sensed the conflict in her silence, a mother torn between loyalty to her son and compassion for her daughter-in-law. Yet the only word she offered was a curt nod before retreating without a sound. Anna closed her eyes and let the silence fill her, pressing her palm to the scar that ran like a jagged line from hip to hip. The physical pain was brutal. Each shift, each breath, ignited a flare of fire. But it was the emotional wounds, the cold absence of support, that cut deeper. Memories of the day washed over her, Juan's polite distance, Julia's triumphant smile, her mother-in-law's frozen complicity. Anna had stood like a statue then. But inside, a war had ignited, a silent war with no words. She fought the urge to scream into the emptiness. She fought the urge to collapse and weep at the injustice of it all. Instead, she cradled her son close, letting his warmth seep into her bones. His tiny fingers curled around her thumb, anchoring her to purpose. Night fell, and Anna's world narrowed to endless feedings and the hum of the baby monitor. Each cry drove a fresh spike of pain through her abdomen. She bore it without complaint. No nurse could soothe this ache. No pill could dull it. In the darkness, she confessed her fear to the ceiling. I can't do this alone. But only her son heard. And he answered with a soft COO that sounded like forgiveness. By morning, the days blurred into a cycle of pain and perseverance. She learned to rise with the first light despite her body screaming in protest. She learned to dress her son with one hand while the other braced against the mattress. She learned to hide the bruise in her voice when calling the pediatrician, so no one else would know how close she came to unraveling. Her mother-in-law brought meals, oatmeal, boiled eggs, bland soup, and set them on the kitchen table without a word. Anna forced down the food, knowing every calorie mattered for her milk supply. But each bite tasted like ash, as if the betrayal had poisoned everything. One afternoon, a wave of dizziness hit. She reached out instinctively, hand grazing the edge of the table. Suddenly the world spun, and she crumpled to the floor, son still in her arms. The baby monitor hissed to life as her call for help trailed off. Her mother-in-law burst in with frantic urgency, scooping her granddaughter and calling her name. In that moment, Anna saw something shift in the older woman's eyes, genuine fear. But fear alone could not heal the silence that had grown between them. Anna lay on the floor, chest heaving, and realized that survival required more than physical endurance. She needed a plan, a way to transform her silent agony into action. For her son's sake, she could not remain trapped in this war of unspoken pain. Slowly, she rose through the vertigo and the wound's fire, and steadied herself against the doorframe. Her son slept soundly in her arms, oblivious to the chaos swirling around them. In his face she saw her own resilience, forged in years of loss and longing. As day turned to night again, Anna settled at the small desk in the corner of her bedroom. The surface was dusty, littered with old papers, sketches from her days as an architect before she set aside her dreams for motherhood. She glanced at them, heart pounding. Each line represented a part of her she thought lost. With a deep breath, she touched the topmost sheet. It was a blueprint for a student housing project she had abandoned months ago. The edges were yellowed, but the vision still shone through. Clean lines, efficient spaces, a shelter built on purpose. A spark ignited in her chest, the first real warmth since Julia's smile had frozen her blood. This was her arsenal, her mind, her talent, her unwavering love for her child. She would channel every ounce of pain into recreating these designs, not for someone else's success, but to build her own rebirth. Her fingers wrapped around a pencil. On the blank page before her, she drew a single line, a starting point. Beyond it lay the long nights of drafting, the meetings with clients, the small victories that would replace each silent tear. Anna paused, pencil hovering. Behind her, the baby stirred, and she rose to tuck him safely back into his crib. His peaceful face was a promise. She would not let this home, or this heart, be defined by betrayal? Night draped the cramped apartment in silver shadows as Anna settled at her battered desk. The only light came from a single lamp, its glow dancing across yellowed blueprints scattered like fallen leaves. Her body ached, each stitch from the cesarean still tugged when she leaned forward, but her mind burned with a purpose she hadn't felt in months. Beside her lay a half-empty bottle of breast milk and a stack of sterile pads. Reminders of the battle she waged every hour to feed her son. The scent of oatmeal from dinner, cold now, wafted through the air, mingling with the faint tang of antiseptic from her bandages. It was in this tenuous space, straddling motherhood's raw demands and the lingering pain of betrayal, that her quiet rebellion took form. She picked up her pencil, fingers trembling, and traced the familiar lines of a once-forgotten design, a 3-story student housing concept she'd shelved before her pregnancy. The curves and angles leapt to life beneath her touch, each stroke a pulse of defiance. I am more than a wounded wife. Her hand seemed to whisper, I am still an architect. The baby monitor crackled and a soft whimper drifted from the nursery. Anna paused, heart hammering. For a moment she felt the pull to abandon these dusty dreams and rush to her child's side. But she remembered the promise she'd made, to forge a future strong enough to shelter him from any storm. The whimper became a distant echo as she dipped her pencil in determination. Pain flared in her side, and she pressed a hand to her belly, steadying herself. Tears pricked her eyes, tears not of defeat, but of raw resolve. In each blueprint she drafted, she wove the memory of her son's first cry and the sting of Julia's smile. Transmuting anguish into artistry, each technical note, each recalculated measurement, became a brick in the foundation of her new identity. Hours slipped by unnoticed until the first pale fingers of dawn crept through the window. Anna leaned back, surveying her work, neat floor plans, living spaces bathed in natural light, rooms designed for comfort and community. She allowed herself a small, tired smile. This was her rebellion, silent but unyielding. In the hush of early morning, she refused to be defined by abandonment. Instead, she claimed her talent, her agency, and the blueprint of her destiny. She gathered her sketches, gently smoothing creases, then rose and carried him to the nursery. Her son stirred, eyes fluttering open, cradling him close. She pressed her lips to his forehead and whispered, "Mommy's building us a home." His fingers curled around her necklace, anchoring her to this new purpose. Outside, the city began to stir. Inside, Anna felt a quiet power bloom. She had touched the edge of despair, and drawn herself back to life. But one question lingered like a shadow: what would happen when Juan returned? Expecting the same fragile woman he'd left behind. The knock at the door was tentative, almost apologetic. Anna set down her son's bottle and smoothed her hair before answering. There, standing in the dim hallway, was Juan, rain-streaked and hollow-eyed, clutching a plastic bag with a dented can of formula and a child's toy wrapped in faded paper. He met her gaze with something like hope. I brought this for him." His voice cracked on the last word. Behind him, the corridor lights flickered, indifferent to the drama unfolding. Anna held her breath, remembering the first time she'd seen him, smiling at the ultrasound screen. Tears of joy in his eyes. She remembered believing in him. Now, she saw only a stranger who had abandoned them both. She glanced into the nursery where her son stirred, then turned back. "He doesn't know you," she said softly, but each syllable rang like a verdict. Juan's shoulders sagged. "Please," he whispered, "let me help." Anna shook her head. Her heart had grown an armor from sleepless nights, aching stitches, and the fire of her own resolve. No plea could penetrate it now. He stepped forward, placing the bag on the table. The formula canister rolled, clinking against a glass of water. Anna's hand trembled as she reached to pick it up, then let it fall. "Thank you," she said, voice steady, "but we don't need charity." Juan's eyes darted to the hallway, as if seeking an escape. He swallowed hard. I have divorce papers." He held out a thin folder, the edges damp. "If you sign, we can be done." Anna's chest tightened. She pictured those papers on birthing day, the sting of his request still raw. She inhaled, centering herself. In her mind, she heard the echo of her own vow: protect her son, reclaim her life. She stepped away, picking up a pen from the desk. Silently, she flipped open the folder. The papers listed date of marriage, terms of separation, nothing about custody. Her hand hovered, finger brushing the signature line. Tears pricked her eyes, not for him, but for the girl she had been, trusting, hopeful, naive. With deliberate calm, she added a single handwritten clause beneath his typed words. Full custody and all parental decisions remain with the mother. She underlined it twice. The ink darkened defiant. Then she closed the folder and handed it back. This is the only signature I'll give. Juan stared at the page. Speechless. He looked at Anna, stronger, fiercer than before, then at their son, who had begun to wriggle in his crib. The child's face was serene, a testament to the mother who had carried him through storms both physical and emotional. Juan turned and slipped away without another word, leaving the door ajar. Anna watched him go, her chest rising and falling with steady resolve. She felt no regret, only a quiet pride in the woman she had become. As the hallway light dimmed, Anna gathered her son and held him close. In his small heartbeat she heard the promise of tomorrow, a life built not on broken vows, but on her own unwavering strength. The soft murmur of conversation filled the community hall. Light streamed through tall windows, illuminating rows of expectant faces, women who had, like Anna, felt the sting of betrayal, the weight of new motherhood, and the ache of starting over. At the front stood Anna, poised beside an easel that held her final drawing, a sunlit house. Its windows wide open to possibility, its foundation rooted in strength. Her heart pounded. She recalled the night she first sketched those plans by the lamplight. Pencil trembling in her hand, every line drawn from memory of pain and every ray of sunlight conceived from hope. Now, this design was more than walls and rooms, it was her life translated into blueprints. A testament to survival. She cleared her throat and began, voice steady but warm. This isn't just a house, she said, gesturing to the drawing. It's every step I took to reclaim my life. She spoke of the incision that tried to break her, and how each scar became a reminder that she bore her son and this strength. She told him of Julia's red dress, of betrayal's sharp cut, and how she transformed that wound into a new purpose. Faces leaned forward as Anna recounted nights spent balancing feedings with drafting, tears mingling with ink on her sketches. She described the moment Juan returned with cold apologies and empty assurances, and how she filled the void he left with her own resolve. In the hush, the women saw their own reflections, the silent battles fought in hospital rooms, the tears shed when no one watched, the fierce determination to rise. Anna paused before the blueprint's front door. Here, she said, her finger tracing the threshold, is where I chose myself over despair. Here is where my son learned safety not from others, but from the unbreakable bond between us. She spoke of rooms bathed in morning light, crafted for community, spaces where no one would ever feel alone again. As she concluded, the hall broke into applause, not just for the architect before them, but for the journey she embodied. Tears glistened in Anna's eyes as she realized this blueprint was never merely for sale, it was her legacy. Her message, that even the deepest betrayal cannot extinguish the fire within. Holding her son's small hand, she looked out at the crowd and whispered, we draw our own lines between who we were and who we will become. Thank you for witnessing Anna's rebirth. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below and subscribe for more journeys of resilience and hope.